Howdy. Against my better judgment, I figured completely unscripted and impromptu, I'd make some, or rather, a couple tutorial videos for how to maintain a banjo. Um, so I'll try this one out and see how it goes. I might do some stuff where you play a few bits and pieces on banjo as well. But this is mostly just like an introductory bit for anyone that's either first coming over to a banjo or moving over to a banjo from a guitar, which is what I've done. Um, so, very first thing that you want to do is bridge positioning. It's quite important. It's used in the setup of the banjo. If the strings are on all right, the first step will be getting the strings on the banjo. But that bridge positioning needs to come before the tuning's actually done. The banjo itself is in tune. No, it's pretty out of tune now because I moved the bridge around, and that'll obviously affect the tension in the strings. But my banjo is substantially, or rather, my banjo bridge is substantially out of position. I'm not sure if you can make it out on the camera too well. But you'll actually see that down here I've made some markings. Those aren't indentations, those are just like pencil scratches that I put on the parchment section of the banjo, just so I can quickly and easily put it back into position if I need to. Obviously, if it's your first time setting up your banjo, you're not going to be able to do that. So what you do in that scenario is there's this white strip at the top of the banjo. That's called a nut. The strings kind of nest into it. It keeps it nice and uniform. They're the same distance apart. It goes into the fretboard. It goes into the fretboard and then runs down the instrument to the bridge and then to the kind of loopholes that you hook the strings onto. And the bridge is important because obviously it provides a bit of tension, but if it's out of position, then the point of that tension is completely off. The strings don't sound right. So they sound out of tune now. I could fix that by going through the tuning pegs and getting to the regular sound. So you can get it sounding regular with the bridge out of position, but you don't want to do that. And that is because there's this thing called harmonics with stringed instruments, or at least with guitars and banjo. I'm not sure if that applies to like a violin or something. But there's this thing called harmonics, which is essentially when you put your finger on a string, so you don't press it down into a fret, you just rest it on the string itself without pressing down. At certain points, if you pluck, it will make kind of like a really nice, soft, resonant noise. And you can actually use that to see if your bridge is in the right position. So the way that I solve it is if I've got the strings on and even if they're like really out of tune, you can still do this. The only thing that would kind of stop you doing it is if the strings are like way too loose and like they're hanging off like the instrument, then it's a little bit tougher. But even if I was to for instance, I'll do the first one. So I've just tuned that way down, it's way out of position now. Going to be a bit of a pain to tune that back up actually. But just to demonstrate, even with it, even with a really out of tune string, you can kind of get it back into position. Probably wasn't the best time to demonstrate that because the harmonics won't work. But to test if your bridge is in the correct position, what you want to do is if you just place your finger, any finger, at the 12th fret, and that's like, so the little metal strip that's going from the 12th fret to the 13th, if you place your finger there on one of the strings and then pluck it, what it should do is make a very nice resonant noise. Which in this case it doesn't because my bridge is really out of position. I've moved it up, so in theory, yeah, about there. So the harmonic position has actually moved on the fretboard, which is a bad thing. because it's used in playing sometimes. I haven't seen it used heavily in banjos, but it is used in playing. So in order to test if your bridge is in the right position, what I'd recommend is you keep testing with the 12th fret to see if it's making the right noise. If not, I would try to find where it is making the harmonic. So in this case, it sounds like the bridge is out of position, it's too high, and that means the point of the harmonics is too high. So I'm just going to move that down a little bit, try to reposition. It sounds mostly in tune now, but I've moved the bridge back to the markings that I've made. Again, if this is your first time setting up, it's 66 centimeters down from this top nut part. So make a marking there, position it about there, and then you can use this kind of 12 fret trick to put it in the right position. So beforehand it was like on the little fret between the 11th and 12th fret. It should be between the 12th and 13th. So if I test again here, yeah, I'm not sure if it's picking up on the mic reel very well rather, but when you're doing it yourself, you should be able to hear like a very nice soft harmonic noise instead of like the muted string just kind of clanking. So if you get a nice resonant noise, that means your bridge is in the correct position. And if it is your first time doing it and you get it in the correct position, I recommend strongly that you get a pencil, just kind of scratch on markings of where it should be, and then you can use that as a very nice quick reference in future. But yeah, for the very first setup, you want to measure 66 centimeters from this top white bit. Let me get in frame. From this top white bit down to like the kind of base of it, also this little parchment section. That'll give you a rough idea of where it needs to be, and then you can fine tune that by checking if the harmonics work on the 12th fret. And earlier you saw me take a string out of tune, so that's the first string that's like really out of tune now. Yeah, it's like really low. But even with it being out of tune, the harmonics still work on it. So you can have an out of tune string, and the harmonic part, the point of the harmonic will be the same. So if you're first setting up your banjo, what I recommend is you get your strings on, kind of tighten them up so they fit nicely on the fretboard, and then before you tune, use that kind of harmonic trick to reposition your banjo's bridge, make sure it's in the right position, and then you can go about tuning. Because if you move the banjo bridge around, it affects tension on the strings and then it doesn't sound right. Pardon me. So even if you do tune it correctly, if you need to reposition your bridge, it's going to knock them out of tune again. And that should be about it in terms of the bridge positioning. I hope it's been useful. I'll try for a couple more of these, I guess, see how they go. But yeah, just a little nice introduction to banjo and how to keep it. Have a nice day.